What is something you desperately want to know the truth about? I had a 200-year-old ring stolen out of my house. Handed down from my great-great-grandmother and grandmother, every other generation, who are also my namesakes. I was at a low point in life when my grandmother gave it to me. And it kind of felt like, I still believe in you. You can still live up to the name. And it meant so much to me. Just after moving into a house for the first time, someone broke in and stole it. There is almost no chance it would be recognized for its true worth or age. Or history. And obviously, it could never have that sentimental value. I'm terrified it will have been dismantled. I'd give anything to know where it is, get it back. It's not what you want to hear, but it was most likely sold to a "we buy gold" pawn shop for scrap and melted down. Very little jewelry has any value outside of the metals it contains, and someone willing to break in and steal is flipping the goods for fast cash. If the thief could afford to hold onto their loot for whatever reason, then they are not desperate enough to be doing random B&Es. What happens when you leave a room? In my experience, they tend to spontaneously combust. Just exactly how corrupt our government really is. Had a girlfriend whose family was heavily involved in politics. Had endless discussions with her dad about this stuff. From what I gather, it's simultaneously worse than people realize, but also much more relatable than people realize. Politicians are not that much different from the average adult, in that they don't really know what they're doing, but they just fake it until they make it. They are constantly fucking up and trying their best to cover up those fuck-ups, which results in cover-ups of cover-ups. Usually of small stuff. But it all adds up to the point where they don't even remember why they are politicians anymore. It's not for helping people. It's just a series of desperately trying to avoid bad press and cover up mistakes. Also, it's a favors game. Absolutely everything is about exchanging favors. Everything that happens in politics has a reaction. Everything is a trade-off. Then you have upper-level people like Pelosi or McConnell. I honestly don't know much about that level. It's a mystery. Who killed JFK? The truth behind the Baghdad battery. The hidden economy of black market goods and illicit arms around the world. Which American conspiracy theories are true and which aren't? How many miles of poop I have excreted. This is easy with math. And some extrapolating. Start taking notes. How many poops on average in a month? How is their length on average within that month? Go from there. In the case of diarrhea, just know that it is still solid matter. Just in smaller chunks. Make a rough estimate to compare its total volume to a regular BM. Taking into consideration the heightened water volume. Maybe not as exciting as some of the other historical mysteries. But I've always wanted to know more about the Indus Valley civilization. They were one of the earliest civilizations on the planet and built complex cities with extensive planning, including efficient sewage systems. And yet their writing script remains undeciphered to this day, and thus a lot of what we know about their culture and society is mere speculation. There's just so much about them. I'd love to understand what was the language they spoke and what family it belonged to. How extensive were their trade networks? What were their cultural practices and religious beliefs, and what relation, if any, did these have to those of later societies in the Indian subcontinent? What really happened to Madeleine McCann? I think I read recently they found her kidnapper. A convicted predator who was in the area at the time. Yeah, Christian Bruckner. He was a convicted sex offender, pedophile, rapist, thief and drug dealer who originated from Germany but who liked to cross the borders in his camper van to Portugal to stay there sometimes. At the time he was on a spree of robbing hotel rooms, and it is thought that he may have deliberately targeted the McCann's room after an acquaintance who was working in the restaurant that fateful night tipped him off about the unguarded room. Diners at the restaurant would have their hotel room details put down in a logbook, and then a person managing the desk would tip Bruckner off about which rooms were unguarded so that he could rob the rooms while the guests were busy dining. He was a thief but also an opportunistic sex predator, and he probably thought he hit the jackpot when he came across that unguarded child. I think it's safe to say that Maddie is dead and that there is a high chance that she was assaulted before she died. The worst thing is that if some witness reports are true, Bruckner may have kept her alive for a few weeks before he finally killed her. Can your dead relatives see you when you masturbate? Asking for a friend. No. When you do it, you get censored in their ghost vision. Just like in that Black Mirror episode. Go on. No worries. You joke, but I had an ex who legit thought her dead grandmother could see us fucking from heaven. This is lame and relatively insignificant, but I've always wanted O.J. Simpson to just admit what he did. He did. He wrote that book, which was a confession. What information was lost in the fire at the Library of Alexandria? I'm reading the Accidental Adventure series, beginning with We Are Not Eaten by Yaks by Alex London to my son. It revolves around finding the lost library. That doesn't answer your question but brings up mine. What's with the synchronicities? I wanna know why these people keep ringing my doorbell while the baby is sleeping, trying to sell me pest control or a new roof. Motherfucker, it's 2020. If I need some bugs killed or a new roof, I'm not sitting on my ass waiting for somebody to ring my doorbell to give me a sales pitch. My wife is ready to murder people because of this. Worst part is they're told houses with no soliciting signs tend to buy more often. What happens after death? What happens before you were born? It's the same answer for both, nothing that matters to you. My dad asked my little brother why he was born as a joke. He was 5 or 6 at the time, and his answer was that he was a big place with lots of people. And you would choose where you go next. He said he chose our family because he knew me and we were friends. So he wanted to be with me again. He also said that he saw our younger brother, I have 2 brothers, in that place too. And they didn't know each other that well, but they talked a couple of times. He said he had no idea why our younger brother chose to come join this family. It was a big what the fuck moment when he answered. If our far removed ancestors, like way pre-Egyptian, were actually as smart as or smarter than modern day us, and we have just lost all the info over the years, perhaps through disaster from climate or wars or floods. Occasionally we find something like the Antikythera mechanism or the Baghdad battery as just 2 examples, but we have no, or hardly any, information about why it was made or for what. Ancient people were no less intelligent than us. There have been equivalents to Einstein and Oppenheimer in every civilization and era. Here's something to think about: how much human potential has been lost due to slavery or poverty. What if the next Einstein was some kid born on the Pine Ridge Reservation who could never afford to go to college? How many great thinkers and artists lived out their lives in obscure misery, with chains around their wrists? MH360. They found wreckage in the ocean, I believe. They've found parts. The largest being a flaphyrant on an island, but we still have no idea what happened unless by some miracle we find the black boxes. What's going on in Area 51? Classified aircraft testing. It's been used for that since World War II. The U-2 and the SR-71 both spent a good chunk of development time there. All the stealth stuff too, like the F-117A and the B-2. Grandfather was an State Route 71 pilot. For what it's worth, his answer to my question about aliens was, there are no aliens. Only humans from the future. So he was clearly covering for the aliens. I seriously want to know the truth on if I'm truly ugly or not. Sometimes I feel like I look okay. But most of the time I think I look inhuman compared to other girls my age. Honest answer, guys have a wide range of things we like. There are objectively beautiful women, such as actresses, that I do not find attractive for whatever reason. So it really just depends on the individual person's preferences. The story behind Somerton Man and how he came up to be on the beach and why all the labels were removed from his clothing. And that tiny scrap of paper from the Persian book that said, "To Mom Shud." How those huge cranes somehow make it to the top of even huger skyscrapers. Aliens. They probably exist. It is likely that they also don't exist. And that life here on this earth was too rare a phenomenon. Everything went right in a gigantic list that had to be perfect. If life does exist elsewhere beyond our solar system, they have never had contact with our planet. What actually happened to Elisa Lam? Like, come on. She couldn't have dropped herself into that tank. She didn't have keys to the roof. And she was too tiny to lift the hatch anyway. So, what? Did an employee kill her? Your average hotel employee couldn't haul a sober young woman to the roof. Restrain her, open that heavy-ass hatch, and throw her inside. Not without somebody noticing. There's no surveillance footage either. Besides all that, there's no evidence that Elisa was raped or assaulted. So what would be the motive for murder? And she wasn't intoxicated. No drugs. No alcohol. But why the weird behavior in that elevator? Then, why the imaginary conversation? Why hide from nothing? I've wondered similar things about her and found the explanation that it was a mental disorder that caused her to believe she was being followed fairly compelling. Would Harambe have killed the kid? Hard to say. Gorillas can go from seemingly passive to utterly homicidal in almost no time at all. And sometimes for triggers we don't fully understand. The zookeepers took the choice that was safest for human life. The real question is why no one blames the parents for not watching their kid. Or the zoo for making bars so easy to slip through.